Ooh, did I get it right? I am live now, it says. Is this working? Is anyone here? Jax West from Stephen Avery Project, MAM Gossip, and Justice with Jax. Waiting to see if anybody comes on here for our live today. I decided I would pop on into Gossip. We have not done a live here in Gossip in a while. And to see what questions, concerns, whatever you guys have about the Stephen Avery case. So, in here, in this MAM Gossip group, yay, Christopher. In the MAM Gossip group, this is where we can get more in depth. Look at my hair going to the side here. We can get more in depth into the drama that surrounds the Stephen Avery case. So I get into some of it on Stephen Avery Project, but the bulk of the people who follow Stephen Avery Project, they're there because they watched the Netflix documentary and are not people that have done the deep dive into the case. So, and their question is always, when is the next season coming out? So these aren't people that know the latest on the case or people's names and all that kind of stuff. So in Gossip is where we just get more into it. And I haven't done a lot of any live videos since I got a job this year, but I do the bulk of my stuff on our YouTube channel, the Justice with Jax YouTube channel. But for today, I was like, let's hop into Gossip and see if we've got anybody out there that has anything they want to say about the case or anything they want to discuss. And here we are. So Christopher's the only one that I have seen comment. So if there isn't going to be anybody who wants to chat and gossip, I got plenty of other things I can do too. So then we won't stay on very long. In Stephen's case currently, hey sexy girlfriend, ooh Miley. I have to go to Costco. Probably gonna go tomorrow because I have to get candy for my boss because she's in a parade, so she needs candy for the parade. So of course you go to Costco for parade candy. So I will see then if they have the pumpkin pie. Can't wait. Miley knows I love the Costco pumpkin pie. I'm excited. I hope they do. Even though, on another note, just found out that I have diabetes, and I actually go to the doctor tomorrow, to get my follow up now that I got my results on it. So, I'm eating as much sugar as I want until I'm told differently. All I know is what my test results, and then the doctor said I'm diabetic, but we haven't been there yet. So, sugar. Um, so Stephen's case, we did go live on Stephen Avery Project. I didn't do it on the YouTube channel because I was just too lazy, I guess. What is this? Oh. Um so we read that the Judge Flowers denied Kathleen's last filing, and then Kathleen was already ready. I mean, it was like a year and a half, right? Since Kathleen had filed, that Judge Flowers was just sitting on that. So Kathleen was already ready to go, that as soon as that denial came in the very next day, she filed with the court above that one and ready to go. And it's always know that you know that Judge Flowers, the original judge, Suckowitz, is never going to rule in Stephen's favor. That's and that doesn't mean anything on Stephen's guilt or innocence. So whatever. Everybody expected her to say no. Um, and that you have to take it to the next court. So how corrupt is that judge gonna be? Don't know. But if if these judges are allegedly they allegedly care about truth and justice, I just never understand why you wouldn't want to hear new evidence. And then to be able to say with 100% certainty any new evidence that you get means there would be a different verdict at a trial. Nobody knows that. You don't know. Nobody knows that for 100% if they would still say guilty or innocent. You don't know. So you should just be going by the facts of the case and the science of the case. And that's not what these corrupt judges and assistant district attorneys and investigators, deputies, not what any of those people do. And that is why I am not somebody who will ever just support the thin blue line. Support law enforcement. Oh, you mean law enforcement who put Stephen and Brendan in prison for something they didn't do? No. Everything is a case by case basis. What? Hold on a second. my best friend just texted me that he's in a meeting with my sister. Why are you in a meeting with my sister? But it could be because he's a lot in my world revolves around politics, and so he's a politician, and he's also I am friends with the circuit clerk of my county, and she's running for re-election, and my friend is her campaign manager for her race. So, and one of my sisters is a clerk at the county courthouse. So maybe he's got a meeting with the circuit clerk and my sister is there. But that's just weird. And kind of just throws me there that because I don't know that he's probably only met my sister one time, and that was my wedding. So it's not like he's friends with my sister. Okay, sorry, that's weird. Um Anyway, and this isn't a gossip thing, this is just a me thing. I get so distracted. Squirrel. So you're going to hear weird random things by me when I'm just going live, cuz unless anybody comments something, I'm like in a room talking to myself. So um so Stephen's case, squirrel, Miley, yep. Um Now we wait for what that court has to say on the fact that there's these it do you even call them new witnesses? This is the thing that bothers me. These witnesses came forward back in 2005. So it's very reminiscent of when Andrew Colborn was working in the jail and somebody reaches out saying you have the wrong person in the jail. So somebody came forward back then and they just bury it. So these witnesses years later, because nothing happens with that, and you think you've done your due diligence and I guess they just don't need my um information. And so years later, when he watches Making a Murderer, he's like, "Oh my god, this guy is locked up for this, and I saw Bobby Dassey with the car." So then reaches out to who he thinks is his lawyer, because from Making a Murderer 1, there's no Kathleen Zellner. So the Innocence Project is what is talked about, is that's who freed him in the Penny Bernstein case, and then dropped him like a hot potato for when the Teresa Halbach thing came around. Everybody dropped him, which I don't understand. I don't understand, when you already know what happened to Stephen in the Penny Bernstein case, that you would be so quick to wash your hands of Stephen, especially when it's the same players. When you have Link and Colborne and all the rest, why you're just automatically going to take that as gospel and drop Stephen and leave him there to rot. Joel says, "Do we know how long it will take now to get a decision on a new hearing or such?" No, Joel, I don't know. Um, I get so confused on all these courts and how it all works and what has a timeline and what doesn't. Um, so, I mean, if there's any lawyers on here that want to chime in, if they know the answer to that, or anybody, I mean, because we've been through this cycle already, how many times in all these years that we've been following the case. Kathleen Zellner got on Stephen's case in January of 2016. So, since 2016, there's a whole lot of people who have been with this case on going over every little thing. So, if there's any supporters that know that answer, feel free to fire away on that. But no, unfortunately, Joel, I don't know. I don't know if we're now waiting for the state to, so it's that thing of she files, then the state's going to file saying you should say no, and then the judge will respond to that. And then there's, the follow-ups. It is so ridiculous, Joel. Our system here in the States is so bad, and it shouldn't take this long. Kathleen Zellner says it typically takes her 16 years to overturn a wrongful conviction. Why should it take this long? And Kathleen has only had his case since 2016. Making a Murderer came out in December of 2015. And so she took it January of 2016. So it's no weird. So even though Stephen and Brennan have been in prison all those years. Aha. So even though he's in prison all of those years, he didn't have Kathleen Zellner working the system where you have to submit this here and wait for this to say no, so then you can go to the court higher. And then at that court higher, then when that's kicked out, then you go to the state Supreme Court. And then when that's denied, then you can submit to the Supreme Court, which I don't remember the number on the Supreme Court, but they take such a teeny tiny little bit of the cases submitted to them. People should care about justice. The Halbach family should care about what truly happened to Teresa Halbach. Joel says, doesn't help that Wisconsin's blocking at every turn. If they have nothing to hide, why not have the new trial and just put it to bed instead of blocking at every turn? I agree. Because it's not like this all doesn't cost money, too. When was the last time Kathleen visited Stephen? Derek says. I don't know. I think it's been a while. I don't think she really visits often. I think everything's done by phone because I know from another case that Kathleen's on, the Melissa Kaluzinski case that's here in Illinois. It's been years since she's seen Melissa, but she has calls with her. Um, so, and Kathleen is in Illinois. So, there's Christopher promoting my book. Um, so even though Kathleen's in the same state as Melissa, and Kathleen's office is 10 minutes from me. And for me, because I go and visit Melissa once a month at the prison, it is a 2 hour and 15-minute drive for me to go down to the prison. So it's not, too terribly long. But Kathleen hasn't gone to visit Melissa in years. But they talk, and Kathleen gives her updates over the phone, or um, sends her mail and that kind of stuff. So, but visits, I think visits only happen um, like when there is something really happening court wise, to go over that stuff. But, and I can't speak for Kathleen Zellner, but if I was his attorney, I would have a hard time telling Stephen anything and giving him a heads up about things that are going on with him doing these letters to the judge, and things like that. He's just hurting his case when he does that. He totally shouldn't be doing that stuff. And whoever his fans are outside that help him with that stuff, I wish they wouldn't. You have Kathleen Zellner, who is the best at overturning a wrongful conviction. Please just do what she tells you to. Easy for me to say. I'm not somebody that's wrongfully convicted rotting away in prison. I totally get being impatient and all that, but that's just what it is. That you have to wait. And I do not believe that Stephen's letters is what made the judge respond. Derek says, do you know how often Stephen gets visitors and if he responds to letters? Stephen does respond to letters. It's so funny because I have a new coworker that I had to train today, and he used to be a corrections officer, and so he was very interested to hear that I'm an advocate for the wrongfully accused. And when I said one of the cases was Stephen Avery, he knew of the case and then now had a whole bunch of questions for me and such. And so one of the things he asked about was writing him a letter. And, we do regularly post on Stephen Avery Project how you can send Stephen a letter. But since he got moved from Waupun to, I can't remember, is it Oshkosh that he is now? I don't remember. To whatever prison he is now, they do not send any letters directly to Stephen anymore, which I think is dumb. So when you look at the address, and maybe Christopher can share the picture in here, which somebody, after it got posted, I had my husband make it for me, the graphic. So it's an easy thing to post. And so we had posted on Stephen Avery Project recently, and somebody's like, Phoenix is spelled wrong. So there's a typo in Phoenix. So this reminds me now that I have to have my husband update that. But so when you're sending him a letter, it goes to a different state, and then somebody there at whatever thing it's being sent to there is then types it electronically, and it gets emailed to Stephen. So Stephen no longer gets the handwritten letter anymore. And so I believe the same thing happens with like pictures, that maybe it's going to be a screenshot of a picture and he doesn't get the straight up picture. And he does get visitors. I do not know all that's on the visitors list. You're limited to how many you can have. And so I do not know who all is visiting him and how often that is. I am not in Steven's good graces. Steven no longer speaks to me. I have not heard from Steven since his mom died. And prior to his mom dying, it had been a while since I heard from him then. He only called me on that because, well, somebody had messaged Stephen Avery Project and said Stephen's mother died and Stephen wants you to post it on Stephen Avery Project. And there had been no news on Dolores dying. And so many times there were rumors that Dolores had died and wasn't true. So I started Googling and there was nothing anywhere. And so then I also emailed Kathleen Zellner and asked her if it was true. And then Kathleen eventually responded to me and said, yes, it was true. And so the person who was telling me to post it, I had responded to them and I'm like, Steven's got my number. And there was still money on my account at that time for Steven to call me. So Steven could call me at my cost if he wanted to tell me what he wanted me to post on Stephen Avery Project. So he did end up calling me and telling me a whole bunch of crap that was going on at that time. And so then we did post it. No, Melissa, I used to visit him. I do not visit him anymore because Sandy Greenman and her friends have lied to Stephen, as well as some of Stephen's family members. And so they have told him things like claiming I was talking shit about Stephen's mother online, which would never happen. Dolores is the only person in the Avery family I have nothing bad to say. So totally wasn't true. And there's been several times over the years with my experience with Steven. There was another time that people told him lies about me. I didn't hear from him for a while. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, like 6 months later, he calls me and he's like, and so when I answer, he's laughing and he's like, bet you didn't think you'd hear from me. And he's like, hey, stranger. And so then when we discussed everything that went on that time, I said, look, when people tell you something about me, please at least come to me and tell me what it is that's being said. And I can answer these for you. Don't just disappear. But Sandy Greenman is very territorial of Stephen, and she wants to be who Stephen, the only one that Stephen talks to, and to me it's not a competition. This case is not my life, and Sandy, quite frankly, has done things that I don't like in her time on this case. I did not like that she's used fans to try and raise money, like her basement had flooded, and so there was a GoFundMe for Sandy to, help me fix the flooding in my house from Steven people. And it's like, are you kidding me right now? That to me is ridiculous. She's the one that broke up with Steven because he didn't accept Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior. But then she was like desperate for people online to be thinking that she was his girlfriend. And what Steven has said to me about Sandy Greenman in the past is he and Sandy will never be a romantic relationship again. She broke up with him, not to him. She did it on Dr. Phil or whatever the heck it was. That's how he finds out that he's, so Dr. Phil has screwed Steven over multiple times. So no, I mean, he does still um believe in her and trust her. So, but she just wants to make sure that nobody else has contact with Steven except for who she believes he should be in contact with. Derek says, I've heard Steven is not talking to any family members. Any validity to this? Oops. It just went down. And it just scrolled again. If so, can you elaborate as to why? Sandy is an older lady that was dating Steven. Correct. She was older. Is Steven currently talking to family members? Well, I can't say with 100% certainty since I do not have any contact with Steven. I also do not go into any of the other groups on the case. It's whatever comes up here in Stephen Avery Project or MAM Gossip or what people send me. That's all I follow on the case. But I know Steven is very mad at his family. Steven and I, from when I used to visit him and when we would talk, he would tell me things about his family. But then again, for him, the bottom line was this was still his family. So especially his niece, Carla, who's a total piece of shit. Hi, Carla. Because Carla always has spies that come in here and watch when I do live videos. So, hi, Carla. So Steven and I would talk about Carla, and he knows she was manipulating his supporters and trying to make money off of this case. But at the end of the day, she's still family, and he's got loyalty to family. So I don't know where he is currently. What is this one? Okay. So in asking about family and talking with Steven, one of the things that I have, and sorry for my dogs barking their heads off right now if that's coming through. I mean, I'm upstairs and they're downstairs, but I've got 4 dogs, so it's loud and obnoxious, I know. But the family mostly did not visit Steven. So the visitors list that I have is from, it started in 2006. I'm so bad with numbers. Where is it? I've got so many files on this case. Okay. Inmate visitation. Sorry, I'm going through this. I'm trying to find what's 2010. Is 2010 the first year? Okay, so 2010 to COVID. Trying to go all the way back to the last page. 2020? Yeah. So these are visitation logs that, so for 10 years. 2010 to 2020. Where's my list? So from 2010 to 2020, Dolores visited Steven 62 times. Alan Avery visited 44 times. Barb Taddock visited 4 times, starting in January of 2016. Carla Chase, the niece who calls herself the family spokesperson, visited Steven 15 times. The first time was on December 25th, Christmas of 15. So right after Making a Murderer came out is the first time Carla Chase went to go visit Steven Avery. Earl Avery visited 19 times. The first time was June 4th of 2016. So after Making a Murderer came out. And who's KD? I can't remember who KD is that I have those initials that visited 3 times. A Dassey, right? Visited 3 times. That's it. So this loving family that cares so much about Steven, that give them money and give them gifts and feel sorry for them, barely visited Steven, or didn't visit at all until Making a Murderer came out and became a huge success. Then we'll start visiting. Except for his mom. Ellen Avery, his father, doesn't visit that much because he's just physically not able. And that is the one nice thing I will say about Sandy Greenman, is that she takes Ellen to visit Steven. So I'm happy for that. That, Steven lost his mom and at least he can see his dad on occasion. So that's nice. There's some dude from Australia that allegedly has money that goes and visits with Steven. But I'm not too fond of some crap he's done. But he goes and visits Steven. And then I don't know who else. Let me scroll back and see if what I've missed. Melissa says, does KZ and or do you truly feel that Steven will feel freedom one day? I can't speak for Kathleen, but Kathleen never takes a case unless she believes that they're innocent and she can win it. And it's a head-heart thing. In my heart, I want to believe that Steven will be free one day. My head leans towards no, because Wisconsin and that system is so screwed up and they are just so tight in keeping Steven there. But if I thought there was no chance for Steven to be free, I couldn't dedicate as much time as I had all these years on this case. I have to think positive that Steven's going to go home. I'm just very upset, though, that he wasn't able to be free while his mom was still alive. Teresa says, what happened that allowed KZ to move forward with the appeal? Well, to move forward on things, you have to have new evidence. You can't argue what's already been in court. So there's the new witnesses that came forward. And so Kathleen was able to use that. But those witnesses, like I said, they're new, but they're not new because they came forward back in 2005. It was just buried. And Kathleen is only finding out about it now. So Derek says, when Barb visited, did Scott accompany her? Scott has never visited Stephen Avery. He has visited Brendan. I don't know where my list is of that. Those stuff used to be sitting here. I mean, because I do have... Is this Brendan's? Yeah, this is Brendan's. So, in those 10 years for Brendan, Barb visited Brendan 433 times in 10 years. And Scott Taddock visited 119 times. And Pete Dassey, Brendan's dad, visited 350 times. And his wife, Steven's ex-wife, Lori, visited 64 times. Bobby Dassey visited his brother 21 times in 10 years. His wife, Kendra, visited 17 times. Brian Dassey, the oldest brother, Brendan's oldest brother, has visited 11 times in 10 years. Blaine Dassey, the one next oldest from Brendan, visited 22 times in 10 years. And Brad Dassey, the half-brother, visited 6 times. Ellen Avery visited Brendan 1 time. And Carla Chase, in 10 years, visited Brendan 33 times. So there's that list of their visits. Yeah, I'm thinking, Stephanie, that Katie is Kendra Dassey. Blaze says they'll do everything in their power to keep him on, no matter the clear evidence. Right. It's and that was something that was in was it in the filing recently where it said, or no, or was it Steven's letter? I don't remember which one, but it's like, even if there was a video of Bobby Dassey committing the crime, they wouldn't take it. They wouldn't believe it at this point. It doesn't matter what the evidence is. Bobby Dassey could go and confess, and they're going to say, nope, we don't believe it. And try and keep Steven there. Let me scroll. Is it not going to let me go back up? All right, so sorry if there's other people's comments I'm not getting to, because it's not letting me scroll up any further, so now I missed those. Oh, wait. We did that one. Sorry, as I'm scrolling through trying to find where we were. Okay, Alex. Oops, and now it just booted me back down again. Sorry. Convicting a murderer. What do you guys want to do about convicting a murderer? In the past, I have done live videos, like I read Sweaty Sweat Sweat, Ken Kratz book, because I don't want anybody to give these people any freaking money. But people want to know what's in it. So I've read the book to you. I can't remember if it's here in Gossip or if it's on the Justice with Jax thing, but you can find it if you want to watch me read the Ken Kratz book. Do I think that convicting a murderer will hurt Steven's case? No, because it's obviously a hit piece with no real facts. And who are they talking to? Those same people who were involved with the Penny Bernstein case, and then were the ones, and this is when I was talking to the new coworker today, going, look at the quinky dink, that the people who are going to be deposed are the ones that are finding the bullet and finding the key and, you know, all that. So I don't think it's gonna hurt his case. Just like making a murderer, you would think, would help Steven's case. Another thing the new coworker said today, need to get this out, you know, for people to hear things. And I'm like, he has the best advocate in the world. Making a Murderer came out, and it was a huge hit for Netflix. So, and there's so much in there, but nope, that hasn't gotten Steven free. So therefore, I don't think convicting a murderer is going to be something where people are going to go, oh, didn't know that evidence. There's going to be some idiots that will watch that and question things, that I didn't know this. And one of the things the guy asked me today was, what are the things that Making a Murderer left out? You know, do you think Making a Murderer was swayed to one side or the other? And I said, absolutely not. And here's why. Making a Murderer, the documentarians wanted to have the Halbach family and Sweaty Sweat Sweat and wanted to have all sides represented. They chose not to be involved in making a murderer. So that is why you will see the stupid press conferences and every time Michael Halbach was giving a press conference and all that stuff, because that is how they're trying to show, at least give you something on the other side. And when you do the deep dive into this case, the stuff you see that wasn't in Making a Murderer just pushes you even more so into Stephen's innocence. There is nothing out there that is like, haha, case closed, Stephen did it. There's nothing. There's no evidence. There's no science. There's no motive. There's nothing. You have Brendan Dassey's obviously coerced confession. Nothing. Let me scroll back. Derek says, sorry for all the questions, but I have a lot. No, feel free. Fire away. Did the investigation and discovery of bones, were all bones found, and was the skull ever recovered? Here's the thing with the bones that were recovered. They claim it was like most of a skeleton was recovered. But now, mind you, the coroner, who is elected by the people, the coroner, was not allowed at the alleged crime scene. The sheriff kept the coroner out. Remember, I work in politics. I work for a state representative. I have worked for senator, governor, judges. A coroner outranks a sheriff. A coroner can have a sheriff arrested. Yet this woman who was the coroner was intimidated by the sheriff, and when the sheriff isn't allowing her at the property, she didn't push. And Manitowoc just had their way with that scene. There's no photos. So they allegedly uncover bones in a fire pit behind Stephen's garage, but there's no pictures of it. And then these bones that they say they're able to get out of the fire pit in a burn barrel are not identified as 100% these are Teresa Halbach. It is consistent with her mother's maternal line. I swear, even though my hair is quite high today, I am not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. And I'm not one of those people that think that Teresa Halbach is still alive. But there is no proof of what happened to Teresa Halbach. Nobody can say she was raped. Nobody can say she was stabbed. Her hair was cut. Nobody can say she was shot. Now, there was part of a lead skull that was found, and there was a curvature in it that would be consistent with like a bullet, and there was something on it consistent with lead. But it's still no proof that she was shot. And here's what happened there. And I got this information from Stephen Drizzen, one of Brendan Dassey's attorneys, because when all the attorneys were doing their tours to talk about this case, I would go to all of them and I would take notes while they would talk, and then I would write an article on it. At that time, I was not running Stephen Avery Project, but I was running a Facebook page called Free Brendan Dassey. And so I would write it for there, I believe, is where it was posted. And so for when Stephen Drizzen and Laura Nyrider did one, I wrote an article and discussed it. And then Stephen Drizzen emailed me. I can't remember if he emailed me or he Facebook messaged me. It doesn't matter. And he said there's an important piece that I didn't say that hadn't been put out there. So Brendan was constantly being interrogated, right? And so the dates were, um, what was it? It it's been a long time since I've thought of this. Um, um, it was like February 26th. They brought him in for questioning. Thank you, Teresa. February 27th, they brought him in for questioning. No, February 28th. Then March 1st was, what did you do to her head? Now, the significance of this is what happened on that one day, the February 28th. That's the day that the magic bullet was found in Stephen's dirty garage full of dust that has been searched a million times. That all of a sudden they find this bullet casing. Is that the technical term or actual term? Whatever you want to call it. So that's the day they found this bullet casing. Up until that point, there was never a discussion of Teresa Halbach ever being shot. So now they bring Brendan back in on March 1st because they need Brendan to say she was shot. Because this is a gotcha moment. What happened, Brendan? What did you do to her head? Punched her? Okay, what else? Cut her hair? Okay, Brendan, but what else? Cut her throat? These men kept trying to lead this horse to water, but Brendan just doesn't understand. And so I don't know if it was Fassbender or Wiegert. And I think it's posted in the files here in MAM Gossip because I've done the transcription of this before because it is very important to know what actually got said in that interrogation. But then it's, okay, Brendan, I'm just going to ask who shot her in the head. And Brendan actually, Stephen, or he did, or one of those. You blow your case with that. They needed Brendan of his own free will to say she was shot. But Brendan didn't say it. And why didn't Brendan say it? Because it never happened. And it was clear by everything else that he was saying, he's just guessing. They want him to say something. They're not letting him go. And so, what did you do to her head? Punched her? Cut her hair? Now, this is allegedly in the Brendan story. This is happening in Stephen's bedroom, in his trailer. We've been through this a million times in all these years of me doing live videos, but I shed like a mofo. You know, I can just pull my hair and pull out hair. So, holy cow, my DNA's got to be any place I've ever been. Even with most of my head shaved now and only hair on the top of my head, my hair is still going everywhere. And now, in Brendan's forced interrogation, he's saying they cut her hair. Yet when Stephen's house is searched and they even go through vacuum cleaners and carpet cleaners, there's no DNA of Teresa Halbach in that trailer. Stephen's not the cleanest person in the world. Listen to his own story of his finger bled into a sink that night and he didn't clean it up. He left it on the sink and saying he notices the next morning now it's gone. Stephen's girlfriend is in jail. Stephen's the only one living there. He works and lives in a salvage yard. Works all day, has lunch and dinner with his mom, and then goes home and goes to sleep and does it all over again. So, Stephen's not just cleaning his house. And there's no Teresa Halbach DNA in that trailer. That I've been to the trailer. You put your hands out, you're touching either side of the wall in the hallway. You're telling me when they're allegedly dragging Teresa Halbach in or out of that trailer, her hands aren't touching the walls? Nothing. There's no Teresa Halbach in his trailer. The only thing they have of Teresa Halbach in his trailer is that he had the bill of sale and the auto trader that she handed him when she came to took pictures of Barb Taddock's van, or Barb Yonda at the time, for husband number 2. And she gives that to everybody. There's no evidence other than Bobby Dassey, the last person to have seen Teresa Halbach alive, allegedly, saying that Teresa Halbach walked to that trailer. Steven said she got in her car and left, and he went in the trailer to go put the stuff away. Why is Bobby's word taken and Steven's is not? Let me go back up. I haven't watched it because I don't want to support them. I'm petty. I hear you, Stephanie. Melissa says, have the Halbach family tried to reach out at all as of late? Not that I've heard, Melissa. The Halbach family stays completely quiet. Now, when Brendan's case was at the 7th Circuit of Appeals, well, that's here in Chicago. So I tended all those, and the Halbach family comes to it. They don't speak to anybody. They don't speak to the press. They get special treatment at the courthouse, so they don't have to wait in line with anybody else. And then they put a blanket over the row of seats to and also they say reserved. And so the Halbach family gets reserved seats in the courthouse that they're able to put some blanket over. I don't know if that's a blanket of Teresa Halbach's that they have there or just a blanket in general. And they get to sit in some private room and come in, basically like a judge coming out of their chambers to come in, so everybody else was in the courtroom and then the Halbach family walks in. So the Halbach family claims that they've never seen Making a Murderer and they don't read anything, and I call bullshit. Stacy says, I think, it just booted me down. Let me go back to finding it. I think the only people who will be swayed by convicting a murderer are the people who already believe Stephen is guilty. There's nothing that could change my mind about his innocence. There's too much corruption and lies that still wouldn't add up or make any sense. I agree with you, Stacy. Those people are going to believe what they believe no matter what's in front of them. Just like I guess we believe what we believe. But again, I go by science and facts and witnesses. And I am not beholden to Stephen Avery. I've already discussed Stephen doesn't like me, doesn't talk to me, even though once upon a time we used to. I used to visit him in prison. There's one visit. There's another visit. If I ever came across information that proved Stephen Avery was guilty, I would say so. There is nothing in it for me to be an advocate for Stephen Avery. Now, some people will say I'm a hypocrite. Christopher already brought it up once, but I did write a book. Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Stephen Avery. This is available on Amazon. This book I do talk about the case in here, but this is about my experience on the case and what has been done to me, what has been done to my husband by the Avery family and other guilters due to me advocating for Stephen Avery's innocence. This book is not flying off the shelves. It's been out. Has it been out a year now, or almost a year? I am by no means rich off of this book, but if he was guilty, I would say so. Convicting a murderer is not going to have anything that's going to prove Stephen Avery was guilty. What do you got? What they're going to talk about that he burned a cat, which Stephen is not the one who burned the cat. Stephen was there. Stephen took the blame for it. Stephen is not who burned the cat. Um, I would not be in the vicinity of somebody burning a cat. I would be putting up a fight, and the people who then burned a cat, I would have nothing to do with. Um, so is Stephen an asshole for laughing and being there when people burned a cat? Yes. Doesn't mean he murdered Teresa Halbach. He broke into a bar with some people and stole sandwiches and quarters. That wouldn't mean he would murder Teresa Halbach. He did not do anything to Penny Bernstein. His wife just had twins. They had a whole gaggle of children. He's got documented evidence with receipts and such that they had gone to a Home Depot and to a Burger King or a McDonald's or whatever it was. So you can't say that he assaulted a woman, and so then the next step would be killing a woman, because he didn't do the Penny Bernstein case. I hate when the judge says that Stephen is the most violent person that's ever been in his courtroom or her courtroom or whatever the frick it was. When there's nothing in Stephen's history that would say you become a murderer. So they're going to say that. They're going to talk about what he did to his cousin by chasing her on the road and getting her to pull over, and he had a gun. Another dick move. I get that he was frustrated with her because she's passing rumors around their town saying he's doing things that he's not, and that's pissing him off. But you don't point a gun at somebody, and you don't do that. But that doesn't mean you murder somebody. What would be his motive for killing Teresa Halbach? He's been free for 2 years, has a girlfriend, is about to get, I want to say it was $300,000 tax-free from the state, and his $36 million lawsuit just started depositions that he was gonna win something. Not the $36 million. He was gonna win money. More money than that guy had ever known in his life. So why is he going to then kill some random girl? There's no motive for him. But there is for Bobby Dassey, who Stephen told me on my visits with him that Bobby would comment on the other times that Teresa Halbach had come to the salvage yard to take pictures of cars that Stephen was selling. Bobby was very aware when Teresa Halbach was on that property, and Bobby knew in advance that she was coming this day because Barb yelled at her boys to clean out the van for the pictures and to get it ready for sale. And the boys also didn't like that van was being sold because they wanted to keep it for themselves. I mean, I know it's just a caravan, but still, it was a working vehicle that the boys just wanted to have another vehicle. So Bobby was completely aware that Teresa Halbach was coming that day and knew in advance. Bobby has disgusting things on his computer. I know the Avery family in the court likes to keep saying the Dassey family computer, but it was in Bobby's bedroom. And these searches were done at times that only Bobby was home since he worked third shift. Stephen is not going to go into Barb's trailer to use the internet there to look up cutting babies' heads off. Stephen had his own computer and had his own internet, and his girlfriend was in jail. So if he was so inclined to look up those kinds of things, he could do it at his own place. He's not going to go into Barb's trailer where Bobby is allegedly sleeping because of the third shift to look up that kind of stuff. That makes zero sense. So you can't prove that Stephen looked that stuff up, but you can prove that Stephen didn't have any porn like that at his house. So, but they wanted there to be porn to try and prove motive, but looking at porn doesn't make you a killer either. There's nothing wrong with looking at porn. But there is something wrong with wanting to see women being raped and murdered, children being raped and murdered. Stephen has zero motive. But the way the court stacked this against Stephen is this whole Denny crap that he has to prove what would be Bobby's motive, but they don't have to have a motive for Stephen. Alex says, what is KZ doing to overcome or bypass the stubborn Wisconsin legal system? That always seems to be a dead-ended conversation. It makes me lose hope and feel like, what options does she even have left? There's no one else in the Wisconsin legal system, I have to click to read more, that would listen truthfully. So it's hopeless, etc. I haven't been following lately, but I hope she has an action plan. I'm kind of confused by what's going on now. Could you really quickly remind us where he's at legally and the next step? So, where he's at now is new witnesses that Kathleen has discovered, or they came to Kathleen. And so it first has to start at the lower court. So, is that the circuit court? Appeals court? Circuit court? See, I'm so bad at keeping track of all this. But so first it has to go to the original judge. And then when the judge says no, you then file to go to the appellate court. Somebody correct me. Don't hold me to this. So you're going up to the next level up. So that's where Kathleen is right now. This court denied it. So now you go over her head to the next court up. And then you're hoping the judge you get in that one will see the merit in this new evidence, that then they order either an evidentiary trial where you get to come bring and show all this new evidence to that judge, and for that judge to say, yes, I think this warrants a new trial. So that's where we're at now, that Kathleen just filed last week. And I think what happens now is we wait for the state's response to it, where the state's going to say you should deny it and here's why. And I always believe the state has, it's somewhere between 30, 60, 90 days for their response. And then we wait for the judge's response. And then I'm never sure when the judge has unlimited time, that they could take years before they respond, or if there's a set time limit. So I totally understand not following closely. I mean, I also, because there's nothing going on. We get messages to Stephen Avery Project all the time on what's going on. There's nothing going on, because that's the thing in this case. There's, or all these cases, that these people sit and rot while they try to get back into court. So nothing is happening. And so, you know, I'm going to sound like an asshole, but, you know, everybody's got your own lives too. So we're not going to eat, drink, breathe this case. We all got other things to do, and maybe some people forget about it. And then when all of a sudden something comes up in the news or pops up in your feed, you're like, oh yeah, what's going on with that case now? You know, so for Stephen Avery Project, it's whenever there is a new filing or any new news in the case, we bring it to you and we discuss it. So it's now we're just waiting for the state to respond to that one, and for then the judge to rule on it. I don't know what judge is assigned it. I don't know if that has happened yet, and how that all works. I would love for Kathleen Zellner to, you know, post it on her website, or I deleted Twitter after all this crap, so I no longer have Twitter. So feel free, when Kathleen tweets or X's or whatever the frick you call that crap now, anything about the case, because she doesn't post anything like on Facebook. She only does it on that stupid X. So feel free to send it my way because I won't see it anymore because I deleted everything off all my stuff. Um, I would love for her to come on Stephen Avery Project or just send me an email of here are the steps, the next steps of what's happening. She doesn't have to give me any intel or whatever, just it's filed here, deadline is this. Maybe I should ask, so my friend's saying that he's at a meeting with Candace Adams, who is the circuit clerk. Maybe I should ask Candace to tell me how, and I know these people that I know that are judges and stuff in my county, they don't follow the Stephen Avery case, but maybe I'd be able to just give them a general thing and they can explain to me. I'm trying to think when's the next time I'm going to see Candace. I'll try and talk to. I'm actually having an event at my home on September 23rd for 3 judges in my county who are running for appellate judge in next year's election. So I could definitely talk to them, which, interesting note on that, one of them is from the Starved Rock area here in Illinois. And so there was that HBO miniseries on these Starved Rock murders. And my husband and I went there to Starved Rock because that's just an hour drive from here. And so I did a video of walking that crime scene and showing you this stuff and all that. And so when I was talking to this guy at one of the political events, I had said to him, okay, so what do you think of the Chester Whittington? Is that his name? I can't remember now. Case. Do you think he's guilty or innocent? And he says, oh, I think he's guilty. And I'm like, you're wrong. He's innocent. And I mean, but it was a friendly discussion. But he's a judge from that area, but not on that case. So I could talk to him about it too. So we'll see. I'll try and talk to any of these judges that I know, and see if they will give me, what it is. Now, mind you, too, I'm in Illinois, and this is a Wisconsin case, but I would think it's the same, right? All right, let me scroll back to people. Okay. Teresa said the sheets or bedding would have something too. Absolutely. There would be some DNA all over everything. Blaze says they stay quiet because they know. Mm-hmm. Derek said, did you just go into the trailer or did you get let in? I want to investigate myself. Would I be met with resistance? No, I did not go in the trailer. I went, but I was there with the Avery family. So, and they've really stepped up protocols there at the salvage yard to prevent people from just going and doing things at the salvage yard. So I only with the family, I should post again the picture of me with Dolores and Barb up on Steven's deck. And only looked in the windows. Did not go inside. I did not ask to go inside. I think if I asked to go inside, they probably would have let me at that time. Absolutely not. They would not let me in there. And the last time I went to Manitowoc, I don't think Bryce is on here because Bryce was with me for that trip around Manitowoc. Was that 2 years ago? 3 years ago was the last time I was in Manitowoc, and they had like a bus parked blocking also, so you couldn't even see Steven's trailer anymore. So, and Dolores obviously has passed away, and but if you went to the salvage yard and you went to the office, Chuck and Earl, I'm sure could be bought. If you offered them money to go look at stuff, they might let you. But I don't know for sure. Heather says, what's the supposed evidence they have on him they were not allowed to use in court, supposedly? It's going to be on this new documentary. I guess they have all of this evidence on Steven. I'm going to throw up watching it. Heather, I don't buy that they have any evidence. They're just saying that to bring in viewers. There's no evidence. If they had it, they would use it. So there is no evidence. They're just trying to get people to watch that crap. Rachel says, what about the fact that Teresa's ex-boyfriend opening her phone and messages were deleted? That should have been spoken more about in courts, but it's like they don't care. They didn't care because they just wanted Steven to put away one way or another. I really respect Kathleen Zellner and the work she has done. That also doesn't mean everything that Kathleen Zellner says, I just go, this is what happened. I do not believe that Bobby Dassey, who is the killer, allegedly, I don't believe Bobby Dassey planted the blood. I do not believe that Bobby Dassey planted the key. I feel, due to the stuff we know about Scott Blodorn and Ryan Hilgas and Michael Halbach, newsflash to people who didn't know it, Teresa Halbach, living with Scott Blodorn, she was having sex with him. That's her right. She's a single girl. She can have sex with whoever she wants. But that's never talked about, that Teresa Halbach was having sex with her brother and her ex-boyfriend's friend, who she's also living with. It was just a sex with benefits type of thing. Teresa Halbach was quite promiscuous. She also had a threesome with a married couple who were photography clients of hers, because she took boudoir photos of people. And so she took naked photos of this married couple and then ended up having a threesome with them and a relationship with them. And then eventually that man dumped his wife for Teresa Halbach. And I am not trying to talk ill of the dead or say that means Teresa deserves to be killed or whatever. Because again, single girl, you go, girl, do what you want. But things are very suspicious with those three boys. Now, I do not think those three boys killed Teresa, because all the evidence, all the science, all the witnesses point to Bobby Dassey. But I do believe when police talked to those three boys, it was Stephen Avery did this, but due to the Penny Bernstein wrongful conviction and starting the depositions, Stephen's going to get away with murdering your sister and your friend. So we need concrete proof to link him to this crime. So that's why I think there's now the day planner that pops up and the valet key. Because remember, the key that is found in Stephen's bedroom is not her key. You can go read the transcripts that multiple people in Teresa Halbach's life said that she was extremely paranoid of losing her keys. So why would she only have half a lanyard with only the valet key on it? Where's her house key? Where's her office key? Her boss at the photography studio talked about her being afraid of losing her key. Where's her office key? Somebody who's afraid of losing their keys is not going to have one key ring that's going to have an office and house key on it, and then one that's your car key. And it's not your regular key. It's the spare key. So I believe that the valet key and the day planner was given to Manitowoc Sheriff's Department by those three boys to frame an innocent man that they thought was guilty. I don't know if in the stack, I've shown this stuff a million times too. If it's in here. Yeah, it's this. So to go in and out of the crime scene, they didn't even have an official logbook. They had a piece of paper that they just wrote things down on. See where there's yellow? Ryan Hilgas. Ryan Hilgas, Scott Blodorn. They were in at 9:03 on 11/7. And then here's Ryan Hilgas and Scott Blodorn. It's titled as Hilbert, being where they're from, because that's where Teresa's from. Civilian volunteers out at 4:28. Those two highlighted. 11:08. In Scott Blodorn and Ryan Hilgas. Those top two yellow. And then there's those bottom two yellow because now they're out. So they were in at 1841 and they are out on 1907. Ryan Hilgas, Scott Blodorn. This is also 11/7. These ones that are now highlighted in green, those are different Halbach family members. Brian, Lori, and Dennis Halbach. And Gary Halbach and Debbie Halbach. And then here they are signing out. Brian and Laura Halbach, Dennis Halbach, and Nancy Halbach. There they are again. And here are those Halbachs again. Why are those boys going in and out of the salvage yard when they're not even letting Dolores go in to get medication? But you're allowing those three boys in and out of the salvage yard. Since when do victims' families, even before a crime scene is processed, getting to go in and out of a crime scene? Isn't that really screwed up? And then, okay, here's another thing we've shown a million times. This is filed December 6, 2005. It's when it's filed that's on there. I don't have my freaking glasses on, and this is really small. Where are my glasses? Decedent's name, Teresa M. Halbach. Date pronounced dead, November 10, 2005. And then actual or estimated date of death, it says unknown. And then in another section, it says undetermined, but then undetermined is crossed out. Date signed by a local registrar is December 5th. So she's being declared dead on November 10th, 2005. But they're claiming, and Stephen was prosecuted, on Teresa being killed on October 31st, 2005. So, Teresa Halbach's death certificate. Let me go to your questions. Okay, I read that one. Angela says, so I was wondering about the RAV4. It shows in one poster with Teresa Halbach, and she's standing outside her vehicle, and you can clearly see the left headlight is not broken. But then the evidence photo that shows the headlight, whoops, and it just scrolled on me again, so now I got to go find it. The headlight completely out of the vehicle. due to some accident she had, according to her ex-boyfriend. But when KZ had that checked out, there was never any report she had an accident and a claim for the damage. My question is, why and how can they withhold that evidence and not let KZ examine the vehicle? This would be why she had to buy the exact replica of the RAV4. I still can't believe how so much evidence proves Stephen and Brendan are innocent. Something I talked about today with at work is I don't understand that either, on why the car that was agreed upon with Kathleen and the state to turn that over and the bones over just isn't. And when there are fingerprints on that car that are not Stephen's and are not Brendan's, they also tested Dolores and some various family members. But why it's not given to Kathleen? Again, with you should want to know the truth and be punishing whomever did it, right? Because chances are Bobby Dassey has hurt somebody else. And so you've just let a murderer be free all these years. Or Scott Toddock. Why cover up that car? Why can they? Why is that a thing that they do not have to account for where the RAV4 is? And allow them to look at those fingerprints, allow them to look at the damage that's on that vehicle, allow them to look at the headlight, tail light, whatever it was that was sitting in the back, test the blood for themselves. Nope. So it all points to they're the guilty ones, not Stephen. You wouldn't have to try this hard to keep people away from evidence if your evidence was going to prove that you were right. Natasha, yes, they're going to a higher court now. Amy says, why doesn't Stephen like you anymore? I would think he would be happy you are keeping his case going. You would think so. I would think so. But I'm not going to just do what Stephen wants. I have done some things in the past that Stephen's asked me to do that I've questioned, and I still did. But then there were other things Stephen asked me to do, and I always run it past his attorney. So like Stephen, my husband owns a print shop. And so Stephen wanted me to make Stephen Avery shirts and sell them so Stephen could profit off of them. And then when I asked Kathleen about it, she said no. So I did not do it, which makes Stephen angry. But he really doesn't like me, Amy, because Sandy Greenman tells him lies about me. And said that I was talking shit about his mother when his mother was still alive. And actually what it was is Stephen's piece of shit family kept using Dolores as a way to fundraise for themselves. And so they would say, Dolores needs a new washer and dryer. So use this GoFundMe to put money in there. And then I would always tell people, absolutely not. Do not put money in that GoFundMe. If you want Dolores to have money, you can either A, send it to Stephen's commissary, because Stephen can send money out, so he can send money to his mom himself. So send it to Stephen's commissary, or send it to Kathleen Zellner, and with a note saying, I want this money to go to Dolores Avery. Do not put any money in any GoFundMe, no matter who the family member is. No. That is not me attacking his mom, and that is me trying to protect his mother. I visited Dolores A couple times. I've got pictures of times when I have visited Dolores, and there was a time that when I visited her, I knew in advance I was going. And at that time, Stephen Avery Project we had like 5 moderators here. And so the moderators got together and they all put money in my PayPal that they wanted to go to Dolores. So then I cashed that money out. And when I visited with Dolores that day, I handed her that cash. And then I also had, I want to say it was a $50 Visa gift card that I had gotten from something for some reason and I hadn't used it. And it had been told to me that Dolores like buys some things online. She doesn't personally. Dolores did not have the internet, but some things were purchased like electronically or something for her, and that one of those gift cards would help her on that. So I had given her the gift card and the cash, and I said something about it once, and the Avery family then claimed I lied about that, and Dolores said I never gave her any money. And then a friend of mine is the one that pointed out in the picture of me with Dolores that friend actually took, you could see on the table the Visa card, in the picture because it was sitting right there. And Dolores had also, she had a notebook that she would write down because lots of people would stop and visit with Dolores and give her stuff. And she would keep a log of it, of who gave her what. And so you could see the notebook in that picture too. And it's like, why would I lie? Because it's not even me saying, "Ooh, look at what I did for Dolores and did all this," because it was like the moderator's money. Um, these moderators are not near here. One was in Australia, one in Canada. I mean, so they're from all over. Um, I'm just the messenger, and I happen to have a Visa card I wasn't doing anything with, so I gave to her, and it's like 50, I want to say it was only like $50. But those are the kinds of things that the family will say about me. And so I used to have a relationship with Kayla Avery, the one who lied about Brendan and said that Brendan was crying about Teresa and all that, and then took it back when she was on the stand. And Kayla was one of the few people that actually adored Dolores because that family all abandoned Dolores and had nothing to do with her unless they trotted her out on social media and such to go, "Oh, Dolores, everybody loves her from making a murderer. Here, donate here for this to go to Dolores." Um, so it was Kayla that actually wanted Dolores taken care of, and she texted me once and told me that Dolores is so miserable in this heat, and that Kayla was surprised by this, but Dolores in her entire life had never had air conditioning in that trailer, and that she was going to try and save her money to put air conditioning in Dolores's trailer. And so I talked about that on a Facebook Live and had said, well, my husband's got like 2 spare air conditioners in our barn. And so it's okay, then we're going to go up there and my husband will put the air conditioning unit in her window. Because she doesn't, it's a trailer. She doesn't need a huge thing that would air condition that. And Chuck and Earl Avery have done nothing all these years, or Barb or Carla or anybody, so that Dolores could have air conditioning. And this was something the Avery family would be upset with me too when I would talk about that Dolores and Al didn't live together. They didn't. Al preferred being up at their crivets, and Dolores liked to stay at the trailer. I'm not saying anything negative about it. People, in relationships for a long time, things, you start to have your own lives, whatever. So Alan's not even there, and Dolores doesn't have air conditioning. So I say, all right, And so I say to Kayla, let me know when is a good weekend. My husband and I are going to drive up there and we're going to put air conditioning in the trailer. And then I talk about it online because I'm pissed that Dolores has never had air conditioning. And then next thing I know, after I do a live, Kayla texts me and she says, Chuck and Earl is her father, Chuck and Earl put air conditioning in for Dolores. So it took me saying I was going to do it to finally make them do something for Dolores. So for Sandy and anybody else to say that I have talked shit about Dolores is so not true, because she has been the one who has been there for Steven the entire time, even when Steven wasn't so nice to Dolores. She was still there for Steven. Alex says, do you think there'll be a new season of Making a Murder? If so, when or not? Alex, I definitely think there will be a new season of Making a Murder, but there has to be something significant that happens in the case for that to be. So he's going to have to get a new trial before there would be another season, I would think. Natasha says, I don't think Ryan Hilgas was looked at enough. Besides deleting her voicemail, how did he get her planner? Exactly. So I think Ryan Hilgas and Scott Blodorn and Michael Halbach gave the cops her planner and her spare key. I think cops planted the key, the bullet, and the blood. They wanted out of that $36 million lawsuit. Derek says, what known relationship does Bobby have with Scott or Ryan? Oh, with Teresa's family? With Teresa's Scott? It keeps scrolling away from me. None. Bobby does not know the Halbach family. Teresa says, I always believed they had Steven under surveillance due to the upcoming civil case. And it just scrolled again, so I gotta try and find it. Where did it go? Oh. Like they were watching the Allen guy. I wouldn't doubt it. That I can't say one way or another, Teresa, other than I wouldn't be surprised. Do you think the Halbachs know who really did it, or are they brainwashed? I think they have no clue. I believe the Halbachs just listen to Manitowoc and la 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 don't want to hear anything else. That's what I think. But you're not doing Teresa any justice, because I know they claim they don't watch Making a Murderer. Ryan Hilgas and Scott Blodorn, you definitely have watched. And you definitely know that the cops said to you, we're not going to be able to get him on this. He's guilty, but we can't get him because we're in this wrongful conviction deposition. And so Steven's going to walk unless there's something that proves he had contact with Teresa. So they handed him the spare key. Why they don't come forward now? Because you should want who really is responsible for Teresa's disappearance and or murder is beyond me. I would want to know the truth of what happened to my loved one. I am not going to just take what a sheriff's department or whatever says to me. I don't even want to start down the path of he was convicted by a jury. Jury doesn't have all the evidence. How much stuff gets tossed and blocked from them being able to see? I hate it. A jury is the least educated person to be making a decision. You don't have all the facts. So I don't give a shit what a jury ever rules. Have you served on a jury? I have, and I know how stupid it is. So him being convicted by a jury, and especially a jury that had Carl Wardsman on it. Wardman? I always forget if it's Wardsman or Wardman. If you go to KathleenTZellner.com and you go to the Stephen Avery page, on the top of that page on Kathleen Zellner's website, you will see, it's the whole top of the page, you will see Stephen in the orange jumpsuit in handcuffs at the courthouse. There's a female officer to his right, I want to say, and then a male officer to his left. You can see his name tag. You can zoom in on it if need be. His name tag says Wardsman or Wardman. Who is that? His father was on the jury. Who is Carl Wardman? Google him. Carl Wardman, Manitowoc. You will find a picture of Carl Wardman as a community service officer for the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. So you will see a Manitowoc Sheriff's Department Community Service Department car. Both doors are open. Carl's on one side in his little CO uniform and the other dude on the other side. And that's only one of two known people affiliated with the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department that was on Stephen's jury. He did not have a fair and impartial jury. Then there's all the cases of them allowing people in with the jury to chat. We're having a beer with them. This case was mismanaged from top to bottom. Stephen and Brendan never got a fair trial, never got a fair shot, and nobody in law enforcement in Manitowoc County cares about the truth and justice for Teresa Halbach. Derek says, anyone want to go to Manitowoc with me or meet me there this weekend? So I have gone several times. We have done videos here in MAM Gossip. I think I've done them on Stephen Avery Project. I've done them on the Justice with Jax YouTube channel, where we have gone to all the places involved in this case. I keep saying I need to go again. Don't know when that will be, but I can never tell in advance when I'm going to go, because the Avery family tries to cause trouble for me when I go. So I do not know when I am going to go next, but I will be going at some point. Amy says, when do you think Barb learned the truth on what son really did it? Amy, I don't believe Barb knows the truth. I believe she's la la la, don't tell me, don't tell me. That's what I think. I think Barb, every time she says, my family is innocent, my entire family is innocent, I think she is saying that to convince herself as much as trying to get people to leave her family alone. So I do not think that Barb was an active participant in getting Brendan or Stephen convicted. But she's also not doing Brendan any favors by covering for her son that everything points to Bobby is guilty with an assist from her husband, Scott. Any update on Stephen's health, and how is both Stephen and Brendan holding up? Thanks. Rachel, I haven't heard anything lately on health. There was something that had come out recently that Stephen had some issues, so I don't know where that is now. I have no idea where Bobby's health is, or Brendan's health is, or how either are holding up since I don't have contact. Um, but I believe that they're both fine outside of being in prison for something they didn't do and wanting to go home. Um, Natasha says, just the fact that Manitowoc was involved in the investigation should have been enough to get a whole new trial. Right, and they were told not to be. They were told they were not supposed to be part of that. They were just assisting, is what was said. And then it's Link who's finding everything. Too much of a coincidence in my book. Stacy says, to me, the whole, well, he was convicted by a jury doesn't mean a thing, especially that jury for several reasons, not to mention all the evidence withheld. And let's not forget he was convicted by a jury for his last wrongful conviction when he was innocent then also. Exactly. So I can only go by what the evidence and science and witnesses, the proof that's out there. And the picture that Kratz painted does not add up. And the fact that Stephen and Brendan are prosecuted for the same crime but totally different scenarios. I can't get past that. I can't. That makes no sense to me how these men, and they're both men, can be in prison for the same alleged murder. But remember, in Stephen's case, there's no Brendan. Stephen's convicted of him and him alone doing this. And Kratz even says there's only one person responsible for this. Yet Brendan's sitting in prison. And Brendan's the one who confessed. It's such a travesty and disgusting. I think I'm down to no more questions down here. So, and we've been on for almost 2 hours. So I am going to call it a night. So Christopher, my moderator, he is a moderator for all of my pages. Justice with Jax, Stephen Avery Project, MAM Gossip. He's got something that he's planning for November. Everybody talks about do a rally, and we've done several in-person rallies, but they've never been very successful. And so Christopher likes to organize an online rally that everybody can participate from home, and he makes it like a whole weekend extravaganza with a whole bunch of different activities. So Christopher is working on that currently. So, so stay tuned for that. He will get stuff posted as he finalizes things. If you are in the Chicagoland area, for one of my friends working for office, I offered to do an event for her where I would talk about the Stephen Avery case and then also discuss my book. So that's going to be sometime in October. We're still deciding when we're going to have it and all that information. So stay tuned for that information if that is something. And it's going to be a fundraiser for her campaign. I don't know what we'd be charging, and I'm not charging anything, but all the money to pay to come to the door goes to help her for her campaign. And then the plug for my book that I always get attacked for because it's, you're trying to make money on the case. Well, whatever. But this is, many years in progress, or that it took me to write this book called Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Stephen Avery by me, Jax West, that is available on Amazon. It is in hardcover, and it is in paperback, and it is also what do you call it? Um um elect what do you call the freaking books that you can read online? But I've never done the one where I like record me reading it. That you can get that. Christopher's constantly on my case that I should do that. But now with my job, and so I work for the state representative on her state side, but then I'm also working on her campaign side, and it's a lot right now. We got a couple more questions, so let me look at those. Oh, Miley, my sexy girlfriend. I'm so jealous. Miley has the most adorable grandson. I want to be a grandma, but my son doesn't want to have kids. So my friend got a puppy a few months ago. So I'm like, this is my grand dog. If I can't have a grandchild, I'll get a grand dog. Um, oh, Derek's in Chicago. Nice. Steffi says, is there a possibility that Brendan is seen by others or another person committing this assassination, and that this person tell him to say that it was Stephen, because he gave a lot of details during his interrogation. Sorry, my English is bad, but I listened to you with the subtitles. Thanks. Audiobook. Thank you, Teresa. No worries, Steffi, because I can't. You just spoke English way better than I speak English, and it's the only language I speak. So I'm never gonna say anything about somebody with English as a second language. Um, I talked about this today, actually, with the new coworker. There is no way possible that Brendan knows anything about this, about what happened to Teresa, or that he could be a witness. I know people have thought that, well, Stephen's innocent, but then Brendan was with Bobby, or something like that. Brendan is he's a sweet kid and literally cannot hurt a fly. There is no way Brendan could witness a woman being raped and murdered and dismembered and burned, and it wouldn't destroy him. It would be all over his face. That kid would be unconsolable. Is that a word? There's no possible way. In Brendan's case, they're saying that he raped Teresa Hallbach with Stephen. All right, I'm gonna get graphic here for people. There is no way Brendan is going to get an erection in that situation. Even if you want to go, Stephen's a dick and is yelling at his nephew, do this, do this. Brendan's not getting an erection. He would not physically be able to rape that woman. He would just cry. And he would run out of that trailer if he saw Stephen, Bobby, anybody doing something to Teresa Halbach. Brendan, no. And the stuff that he said during his interrogation, like Natasha said, Brendan was led to everything. Remember, making a murder. Guilters like to say making a murder is only shown one side. But it doesn't even show you all of that alleged one side. There's way more to Brendan's interrogation than you've seen. And it is clear that everything Brendan says, they've said to him first to lead him to that. So there is no information from Brendan's interrogation that isn't something that hasn't been said to him or alluded to him. Like, they had pictures out on the table for Brendan to look at of Teresa Halbach. You'll remember in Making a Murderer. Oh my God, and I'm really starting to sweat because my husband does not have the air conditioning on here, because it's like, oh, we've got a couple of days that, I mean, well, it's 73 right now, but it's like, oh my God, I'm fucking roasting in this house right now. Anyway, sorry, squirrel. Um, there's those pictures of it's like Teresa's church, and I think there was a picture of the Avery salvage sign that all had these light blue ribbons on it. And light blue was Teresa Halbach's favorite color, so said um, Michael O'Kelly. Michael O'Kelly bought those ribbons, put those up, and took pictures of them and put it on. Oh my God, Miley's in devil's hell heat. So yeah, 73 to Miley, she'd probably wear a snowsuit. Um, um, Michael Kelly did all that and put those pictures out for Brendan to see them, to prey on him and make him feel sad. To look at these things that are up on, I'm sorry, Miley, um, on all Teresa's church and all these things. Well, thank you for ordering my book, Derek, and let me know if you have any questions on it. And I have been considering writing another, but it took me years to write this one, and it's not like this one is too terribly long. What is 19 Celsius, Natasha? I'm really bad. I am Fahrenheit. So, um, and so I can't compute that. So somebody tell me what 19 Celsius is in Fahrenheit for me to compare. Um, so, and they did that to Melissa Kaluzinski. Thank you, Natasha. In Melissa Kaluzinski's case, they put pictures out for her. They did that the Marnie Yang case, another case that I'm part of. They put pictures out for her to see, and so you can kind of assume some things by pictures that they put out for you. So it helps you answer the questions to say what it is they want you to say. And all you know is you want to get out of there. That they've kept you there for hours and hours, and you're just trying. Thank you, Teresa. You're just so. What can I say to make this stop, so I can leave this room right now? So sure, we'll have these pictures out, crime scene photos. So you can kind of tell from crime scene photos, Natasha in the Netherlands. So you can kind of piece together some things. Brendan doesn't have a high IQ. Melissa doesn't have a high IQ. Marnie Yang is very smart, but she's also autistic. I think that's the word. Stacy, I would love 73. I'm in South Louisiana, and it's been 100 degrees and higher here. It was over 100 degrees here for a while. And now we've dipped down. And now coming this weekend, it's going to be back up in the 90s and higher again. So freaking hot. And I just can't take it. But my husband's like, he can't take our $400 a month bills due to having air conditioning on. So if he was able to get the opportunity, he was turning our air conditioning off for a little bit. So it's off right now, and he's not home. He's out fishing. So I'm the one here sweating and I'm on the top floor of our house. Our house is 3 floors. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4 floors. So all the heat's up here. I'm really hot up here. So, all right, I'm going to go. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. We do there is official Stephen Avery Project at gmail.com. There's also justicewithjax at gmail.com. If you are somebody that is a witness of any kind of the Stephen Avery case, please reach out to Kathleen Zellner. So you go to KathleenTZellner.com, you go to her Stephen Avery page, and she has a phone number and an email, I believe, right there. We have posted it on Stephen Avery Project recently in the last live video I did there. Somebody asked me to post that information. So, and I think I pinned it near the top too. So also there's that information in the pin thing on the public page of Stephen Avery Project on how you can write to Stephen, how you can write to Brendan, if anybody would like to write them letters. I do not know when I will go live next. I go live when there's some kind of filing or if some drama occurs. You know, if the family does something else fucking stupid that I want to bitch about. On the Justice with Jax page, that's where I'm free to discuss other cases because, you know, as I've said, Melissa Kaluzinski is who I really, really care about. And so I, of course, always want to talk about the Melissa Kaluzinski case. But if I talk about it on Stephen Avery Project, even though her lawyer is Kathleen Zellner, people then get mad and go, what does that have to do with Stephen Avery? So Justice with Jax is where I will talk more about her case. Then there's the Marnie Yang case. Marnie Yang case is really interesting. So, and look at how little she is. Look at how little Marnie Yang is. In this picture, I'm going to say I'm 5'7". Because I went to the doctor recently, and I'm now 5'6". I've shrunk. I have been 5'7" since junior high. And so when they took my height and she said it out loud, I like did a double take. 5'6", but I have a back disease. So, you know, so my back is crumbling, but it was still shocking to me to hear 5'6". But so I'm still going to say in this picture I'm 5'7". Marnie Yang is 4'9". And so she is convicted of shooting a 5'9" woman to death. And where that woman was shot is the first shot went in her shoulder and out down by her elbow in a downward thing. This woman cannot reach me that high at 5'7". So imagine somebody 2 inches taller than me. Maybe 3 if I was already 5'6" at that time. I don't know. The science does not support Marnie Yang being able to shoot a 5'9" woman in her shoulder in a downward motion that comes out near her elbow. Yeah, so frustrating. So I talk about Marnie's case, Melissa's case. Oh, this is something too in Marnie's when I'm showing you how little she is. On one of the visits with her, I had her draw her hand to show how little bitty little hand she has compared to mine with the gun they're saying that she used, and this gun misfired. Like every other round was a misfire that had to be ejected, so there were live rounds on the ground. So little bitty hand was handling that gun and shooting somebody 10 inches taller than her in a downward motion. Nope. Yeah, and I go by science and facts. Steffi says, thank you very much for your answer. This is the first time I've interacted in this case. I understand that Brendan would have been shocked, etc., if he had witnessed anything. But how had he had all these horrors? How to have all this in the head? I'm not saying he's guilty, but where did all inventions come from? Everything that Brendan said was told to him first. And so he is going by what he was led to say. And originally, the cops just wanted Brendan because Brendan was Stephen's alibi. Brendan and Stephen had been together that night. So they needed Brendan to say that there was a period of time that he was not with Stephen to give Stephen the opportunity to have committed this crime. But Brendan's not understanding that. And so eventually, the only way they can do away with Stephen's alibi is to get Brendan to implicate himself. And so they tricked that kid. They just tricked him. And I know from I talked to Scott Toddock. I was at Barb and Scott's house and interviewed them back when I was friends with them before I knew their role in all of this. And so one of the things I asked Scott Toddock is, you said the fire was this high, then you said the fire was that high, and the fire's this high. What's the deal with that? His answer to me was, he doesn't even know if there was a fire at all. He has no clue. He doesn't remember. And it was the sheriff's department that kept pushing him to say that the fire was higher. Brian Dassey. Brian Dassey is the only Dassey brother that I have met in person, that I met at Scott and Barb's house. And so he told me the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department did the same thing to him that they did to Brendan. They were trying to get him to say things that didn't happen. But Brian is older, and he doesn't have the low IQ that Brendan has. So he was able to do, I'm not talking to you. And so that's why you have nothing made up or anything that came from Brian Dassey. He didn't fall for it. So if they're going to manipulate Brendan, they're manipulating how many others? There's also other cases in Manitowoc where these same people are involved in other unexplained murders. Melissa and Marnie from here in Illinois, they're the same county and the same cops that did these wrongful convictions. So it happens over and over. It's the same playbook. So Brendan is absolutely innocent. And the things he said was put there by Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert and Michael O'Kelly. I just know all the conversations I had with Brendan before his mother cut off our communication. So all the phone calls I had with Brendan, all the letters I went back and forth with Brendan on. I know that kid's not capable. Just not. These guys are innocent. Teresa says, where can I learn about Melissa's case? Newbie here. This always happens to me too when I'm like, I'm going to go. And then I keep chatting. Melissa's case was covered by 48 Hours 2 times by Erin Moriarty. So one is called Blaming Melissa and one is called Fight for Melissa. I don't remember which one is first or which one is second. They are on YouTube, I believe. And then I also think if you go to KathleenTZellner.com, she has a page for Melissa Kaluzinski. I think if you go on that page, as on Melissa's page on Kathleen's site, she might have the links to Fight for Melissa and Blaming Melissa on 48 Hours. Those are accurate stories on Melissa's case. Unfortunately, in the Marnie Yang case, there is nothing out there that you could watch on Marnie's case. sadly, everything that's out there on Marnie's case tries to say that she's guilty. But on Marnie's case is the only one that I'm on that I'm actually paid to be a part of her defense team. Um, and so I have sat with all the experts that have been hired on Marnie Yang's case and watched them present these independent experts who they they're doing a job. They don't. I'm I'm saying they don't care about Marnie, but I don't mean it like how it comes off. But it's whatever. They're given the evidence and look at this evidence and what are your findings. And so the one that got me right away is when they have a dummy of the victim with the bullet hole in the that pointer stick going through. I mean, you can't get past that for me. That there's just no physical way that Marnie Yang could have shot Ronnie Ryder. Just not. I have a picture of me with Marnie's daughter, Emily. Emily is actually an inch taller than her mom. And so I had her stand in front of me with her hands like this, trying to shoot me at that angle. And had a picture taken of that to show there is no way she can shoot me in a downward angle. It's science, it's facts. But on Melissa's case, 48 hours, blaming Melissa and fight for Melissa because Erin updated it at one point, and she keeps saying that she'll do it again because Erin absolutely believes in Melissa's innocence. You can also, I think you can Google Melissa Kaluzinski interrogation video, and that's where you can see her entire interrogation, not an edited version of it. Kaluzinski is Kalusinski. Melissa Kaluzinski. So go ahead and jump in on Melissa Kaluzinski's case. You can look up on Marnie Yang case, and you can message Justice with Jax Facebook page or my Gmail account or whatever if you have any questions on those cases. Steffi says doesn't know my name, and then Rachel said my name, and no worries on that. So, all right, really out this time. Teresa says thanks. So thank you all for joining me. Christopher, Christopher has a life too. Christopher tries to give a heads up when I'm going to go live and get something scheduled, because sometimes there's like a spur of the moment thing that I'm not working, I'm home, and I want to chat. Or I want to talk about another case. Oh my God, I should do a live. I watched on Netflix recently. See, squirrel, here I go again. The new Netflix thing on the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Ooh. I could do a whole video of us talking about that, and have before. You can find it on, no, I'm going to keep hiccuping, on the Justice with Jax YouTube page, because I was addicted to that trial. All right, really going. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk again soon, maybe. Keep Stephen and Brendan in your thoughts. Investigation continues.